good. Yes, it's a good idea.
It's okay. We were literally just talking about other things, but you know what we should talk about now? This podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to the Semi-Bookish podcast. I'm gonna find really weird and really corny jokes every single time I do this.
I think it's okay. You need a healthy lead-in sometimes.
We do, and this is the healthy lead-in for today. Which, I mean, Tony, do you want to start off by telling us what's entertaining you this week, or do you want to make one of us go?
I can go.
Okay.
Wow. I'm trying to think of the sea of things I'm reading right now. Okay, I've been reading gobs of nonfiction, which is a bit ridiculous. Well, not ridiculous. Maybe it is ridiculous. Anyway, I can't stop reading all these little nonfiction things that I'm reading. So, of the current crop of things, I'm reading How to Be Alone, which is a collection of essays by Jonathan Franzen, who is the whitest man since Ernest Hemingway to write an American fiction, I think. But he's an interesting thinker, if a cranky one, but, he's interesting. I'm reading, what's the other essay collection? My new, writing Bible, which is not even that long. It's 100 pages. Mm-hmm. I don't even think there's a single book of the Bible that's shorter than this particular book, but it's so good. It's called The Writing of Fiction by Edith Wharton. I'll tell you how good it is. It is so good that only after reading a single section and about half of because it's broken up into 4 sections, because she wrote everything. So there's the section that's called In General, which is sort of the opening. Then there's On Short Stories, which I skipped for now. I'm going to go back and read it, because now I'm like, all right, maybe she can help me write short stories. I hate short stories. Writing them. Reading them is great, but I hate writing them. And then the next section is on constructing the novel, and then I can't remember what the name of the fourth and final section is, but it's, it's broken up fairly well, and it's really short and concise, but part of the reason it is because she's very clear, crystal clear, about what she believes quality fiction writing to be, and what should be on the mind of the artist as the artist is whatever the writer is doing. And what I think is most interesting about her perspective too is her knowledge base. Now, mind you, this book was published in 1925. So her knowledge base is seemingly boundless. And just when you think that she's gonna throw an aside, she makes this little aside about adventure novels, and you're like, oh, maybe she doesn't like adventure novels. And she's like, but let me not say that adventure novels are terrible, because Alexander Dumas wrote adventure novels, and I will not live without those. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she has a way of filing novels into certain places, or just any kind of fiction writing into certain categories that are very clear and distinct. And then she always sets out examples that in her own reading journey are indisputable. They're the things that exemplify this. And she even says something really, I think, interesting about Jane Austen that I think is not a new observation, and probably was not a new observation at the time that she wrote it. But it is one of the clearest descriptions is the wrong word, but it's sort of the clearest way that I've seen what Jane Austen brought to the English novel of manners that I've read. Maybe I am underread. But the point is, she's very clear about even something as pretty well-read, documented, and studied as that, which is nice. So yes, I love that book. It's called The Writing of Fiction. It's Edith Wharton. She's amazing. So amazing that I bought $100 worth of her paperbacks from Simon & Schuster, because they had the covers I wanted.
Yeah, I saw you do that.
I may or may not really like her. What else am I reading nonfiction-wise? It has taken me a long time to finish this essay, and I'm still on the third part of the essay. But Toni Morrison has an absurdly long, 32-page essay called Unspeakable Things Unspoken, which is a lecture that she gave at the University of Michigan in 1987, in which she upbraids the literary community for its obsession with canonizing American literature, and how on the one hand, African Americans can now participate and don't need permission, but also because they don't need permission, maybe they should stop mewling about how we don't belong and just get the work done. And that's just like the Cliff Notes version of how deep of a thought how much thinking went into this essay. And what she says about Moby Dick is still the most revolutionary thing I have read about Moby Dick. Because in a nutshell, she says that the whale is white supremacy and that is why they all die in the end. Ooh. And I was like, ma'am, that is so rude. And of course, because it's a speech given at a university about the American canon and she's an academic, she's not just like, oh, for funsies. No, she like lays it out and is like, and these are just the 3 examples I chose at random. There are so many more that I could have put in here, but you're going to have to read the book for yourself. And it's just like, it's really fascinating. And I think if you're someone who's interested in particularly like 19th and 20th century founding American fiction, it gives you a new insight that isn't trying to prove a point, like, oh, I'm right about, this, and this is how we should have been viewing it all along, but more of a sense of like, hey, we can finally see this aspect of that work, which has always been there, but we've never been able to talk about it critically because, the critics did not want to talk about race because it's America. Of course they didn't. So anyway, yes. But it's in her nonfiction, one of her nonfiction books called The Source of Self-Regard, which was the last thing that she published before she died. So, in fact, I want to say she published it February of the year that she died. So it's a pretty exhaustive book, but the essays are wonderful. I'm also reading essays by Zadie Smith here and there because I think she's an interesting and excellent thinker. I've read some of her essays before. And on the fiction side, I know this is getting really long, sorry. On the fiction side, I just started last night White Teeth by Zadie Smith, which is her debut novel. And
I've heard a lot of good things about that.
I have too. It's hilarious, for one thing. She has a really nice sense of humor in that, which is really cool. And then Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, which is her debut novel. There's a reason I'm reading both of those at the same time, which I won't go into here. And then I've been playing way too much Binding of Isaac, which is impossible because you can never play too much Binding of Isaac.
Oh, yeah, you started that, didn't you?
Yes, I finally found it's so fun. It's fun. I was telling Grant this recently that the reason that it's fun is because you don't have to win. Like, that's not the point. You can set yourself arbitrary goals, but that's the whole the fun of it is that you can just play it and not have to advance in order to feel like you're playing the game and having fun. You just play it, and I like that. We need more games like that. So yeah,
it has an interesting aesthetic as well.
It does, yes. I am terrified to start Elden Ring, but I need to start that soon because it is one of my goals this year is to play some Elden Ring on my own without people trying to captain me through Elden Ring. Anyway, all right, Erin.
Yes.
I choose you. I select you.
Am I Pokemon? Yeah! Okay, anyways.
I didn't. Yes, you are.
Book-wise, I'm technically only on, page 9, so, bear with me here. I'm reading The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova.
I think that's how you say it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula. Just, it's a lot of Dracula.
Oh, okay, already?
No. The main character right now is basically, explaining, what their father does. And if I remember right, her father is, an archaeologist type guy or an academic, and they travel to different places.
Oh, cool.
And they're traveling to a European town where they're calling it Emona, and it's a Roman name to shield it from, the tourists who would follow you around. So, I'm pretty sure she's near Dracula's castle. Because there's a giant old castle. And, it's either that or some Viennese, area. And so I'm pretty sure this is Dracula's castle.
Right.
She's supposedly supposed to get sent back in time. I don't know. This book came out in 2005. We're reading it for once.
Oh, is it that old?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really weird. The Historian is 21 years old. That hurts.
Yeah.
I remember when it was new.
Honestly, at used bookstores and whatnot, that's one of the most like I've seen so many used copies of The Historian, so I don't know if
Really?
like tons of people read it or a bunch of people started it and never finished it or whatever.
The early 2000s was a wild time for historical novels because you like Matthew, I think his name is Pearl. Yeah, Matthew Pearl had kind of a smash hit. And so everyone and their grandmother wanted a Matthew Pearl like historical like drama. And remember, the Da Vinci Code was huge, so everybody wanted this sort of like historical thriller thing. But 720 pages is not a historical thriller by any means.
This is 702.
Oh, 702. Okay, so I think a lot of people bought it
705. Sorry, I'm
because
wrong.
they were like, "Ooh, more book," but they forgot that thrillers are short for a reason. So this was historical.
I'm not
just
reading
not a
it for the historical thriller aspect.
Right.
I just saw the word Dracula and I went sold.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I will next episode I will have more of a hey, this is what's going on in this book, aspect of life.
I can't wait.
And then I am playing Sims because of course I am.
Oh yeah.
They're coming out with a royalty pack next month.
Ooh, fun.
I don't know if I'm going to buy it just yet. The thoughts are there.
Of course you're going to buy it. What are you talking about?
Does it add like a line of royalty or something?
3.
Okay.
The world has 3.
Oh.
One of them is an African-based royalty.
Okay.
And then there's like... So in lore, in Sims 2, there's a town called Veronaville, and Veronaville has the Monties and the Caps. It is quite literally a Shakespeare-esque thing.
It's very specifically.
And in the most recent pack, which is the nature pack, which is the fairy pack, they brought back the Summer Dream family, which is Titania, Oberon, and
Sure.
Bottom.
Right.
Though, in the Sims 2 version, Puck exists. Puck does not exist in the Sims 4 version, and this is a tragedy, and Sims, I beg you to fix this. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That's a
so
choice.
The Caps are back in this new pack, and then there's one other group, and I don't know who it is yet. I'm trying not to get too into it. When I get the pack, I like to dive in completely blind.
Yeah.
Because I just like to be able to play with it and learn things organically. I'm also playing Sunhaven. I am trying right now to get a achievement for every single bachelor and bachelorette in the game, where you have to reach 20 hearts. And the only way to do that is you have to get married to them. And so basically I'm waiting for Toni to finish their drink because I cannot say this out loud without them spitting it out. I am marrying every single bachelor and bachelorette, getting to 20 hearts, and then giving them a memory loss potion so they forget I existed, and then moving on to the next one. And so I'm doing that with every single one right now.
That is some TVD stuff if I have ever heard. That is some Shadowhunter stuff.
Meanwhile, I'm also
what?
working, there's a part of the game where you have to fight the moon dragon, and there's 2 different ways that you can fight the moon dragon. You can either literally fight the moon dragon. It's like a whole entire thing. It's kind of annoying because you're the only person who can fight it. It's whatever. Or you can go the long route, which is the a la Stardew Valley route, where you turn around and there's like a bunch of different altars, and every single altar has a different theme to it, and you have to collect all of the items for that altar to give to that altar, and then it'll give you a prize. And to be able to beat the moon dragon or to peacefully solve the problem, you have to finish every single altar. So that's the one that I'm doing.
Oh.
Because I'm a completionist and I like to collect things, and so we're working on that.
Fun.
And that's what's entertaining me right now. Grant,
Hey, that's me.
congratulations. What would you like to tell us that is entertaining you at this moment?
That means you have to tell them about the movie that we watched because I forgot.
Yes. Well, you're gonna have to remind me of the name of it.
A Night Like This.
A Night Like This. Yes.
I watched it 4 times. In 4 days, actually.
Impressive, but
Obsessive, I think, is the word that you're looking for, but carry on.
it all depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a nice movie. I enjoyed it. Well, you're much better at giving summaries.
It follows 2 young men, one who is gay, one who is dubiously straight.
That's a good way to describe them.
Yes, I know, I've had fun fun using that term. One who is British, one who is German, one who is wealthy, one who is poor. These are the same two people, by the way. These are their differences. The only thing that they have in common is that on the night that they meet, it is the night that both of them could have no longer lived if they had made different choices, but they made the choice to live, so they met each other and they spend the whole night together.
They don't know that at first, though.
Right, they don't know that at first, yeah. So they kind of, as they're, trundling through this night together, excuse after excuse after excuse to keep together. It's a very sort of like Nora Ephron kind of thing where you walk and talk all over the city and share things and all the good things and all the bad things and all the things you hold back from other people because you're never going to see these people ever again, presumably.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for movies that take place over like one night.
Yeah. And I think this just is an excellent example of that. It's not the kind of movie that is revolutionary because it's doing that. It's revolutionary in the time in which it's doing it and the fact that it's happening between two men who, in a way, aren't really actually aiming for each other in a romantic sense, but also in a way because neither one of them is devoted to any kind of heteronormative reality. They're a bit more open to intergenerational male bonds, and that's not something we see in movies that are about maleness, particularly male isolation, ever. So that is, in its way, what I found revolutionary personally. Someone else might watch this and go, okay, yeah, that's a nice movie, and then move on. But, that's why I watched it 4 times.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it reminded me a little bit of the movie My Dinner with Andre, in that it's one conversation between two people, and similar to My Dinner with Andre, they're kind of not diametrically opposed personalities, but they're coming from different places and different experiences and stuff. And they have different, outlooks on life, and just kind of the battleground of that. And eventually, it's less of a battleground. They find common ground and whatnot. But yeah, good movie.
Yeah.
Continuing my delving into art house medieval movies.
Oh, yes.
This one I put off for a long time. I don't know why, because it's right up my alley. But it's called Andrei Rublev. Directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, who's a legendary Russian director. Yada yada yada.
Lots of Andres in this.
Lots of Andres. They need to come up with. Those Russians need to come up with some new names.
Oh, that's true.
That's all I'm saying.
There's Andrech. Anyway, carry on.
Nikolai.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there we are. The 2 Russian names.
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
So it it's ostensibly a biopic, but not really. Andrei Rublev was a medieval icon painter,
What?
Yeah, like he would draw icons of like saints and Jesus and stuff.
So he's an iconographer?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. It is not like a point by point thing of his life at all. In fact, you never see him painting once in the entire film.
That's interesting.
In fact, it's arranged in such an interesting way that it kind of makes me think of this idea that Stanley Kubrick put forward. He as far as like how he organized his stories. Sometimes he referred to it like as submersible units, basically, where a film is separated into various sections, thematically connected, but not necessarily like there can be large jumps in time, backwards, forwards. No direct continuity.
Did that really well with Barry Lyndon, I think.
Yeah, and then he would also take advantage of like the ambiguity that creates.
Yeah.
And I feel like Andrei Rublev is really ripe for interpretation and stuff. It deals with faith and art and how one informs the other. The kind of political dynamics in Russia at that time, and it makes sense, but not in a straightforward way.
Sure.
I really, really need to watch it again because it's fascinating. And like all of Tarkovsky's films, it's beautiful. He said multiple times that he wanted to create like a poetic cinema, and often it'll, whereas another film might just kind of keep the story going. He's not afraid to linger, like either just on an atmosphere or just beautiful images. Like he does this in a lot of his films, you know, with like a river or something, just kind of a slow pan through nature and whatnot. Either to get a point across or just kind of wallow in the beauty, you know.
Not enough movies linger anymore because we're too afraid of sentiment.
We're too afraid of sentiment, where our attention spans are completely destroyed.
Well, that's
That's a whole other...
That's
well,
yeah. Yes, that I think that does definitely contribute to, you know, other things, other factors that speed us through these storylines that are like, wait, something's missing. And it's like, yes, because you could have spent literally 5 more minutes focusing on that one thing. Or not even 5 more minutes, it's a long time. But, you know, like another half a minute. And, you know, there's a fear. There's always, we're chopping things down to smaller sizes, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. And most of the film is in black and white. The last sequence is in color, and it's rather striking, the way that it's used. Because I did mention that you don't see him painting, or, you know, there's lots of conversations about art, you know, either from him or between him and another character. But at the very end, I'm kind of spoiling it, but also it was released in the 60s, so whatever. Finally, you do see his actual, like, works of art, and it's finally in color, and it's just set to this beautiful classical music, and it lasts for like 10 minutes, and you just slowly pan over. It's crazy.
That's cool.
But yeah, it has a lot to say. I need to go back into it to kind of form a final opinion, but I feel like it's one of those movies you kind of live with, you know, you kind of go back to throughout your life, and you'll probably see different things.
A bit like poetry.
A bit like poetry, yeah. So that's what I'm watching. I'm reading Structuralism and Semiotics. I think the guy's name is Terrence Hawkes. It's literally just an overview of the history of structuralism and semiotics. So
yeah, I might have to read that after. I'm
yeah, you can borrow my copy.
I do enjoy. Yes, exactly. I do.
Big words.
Do enjoy structure. Okay, semiotics.
Yes.
What is that?
The study of signs.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
See, that's a big word for something that just has such a simple answer.
Yeah, like sinology.
That's one of the reasons I love words. They're so weird like that.
Yep, started by Saussure himself.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and I'm like halfway through it. It's just an area of study that I wasn't super familiar with, but has come up so frequently in regards to other stuff that I felt like I finally had to dive in.
This is sort of like in terms of structuralism and semiotics, is looking at literature specifically, or
not specifically, because it also touches on like structural anthropology, like Levi Strauss and all the stuff that. Yeah, I mentioned that all the stuff that he did with, you know, trying to find deep structures in human organization and stuff, looking at primitive societies, how they're organized, stuff like that. And then there's also structural linguistics, where, you know, they try to find deeper structures in literature and language. And like I was mentioning earlier, like with the Russian formalists, you know, trying to nail down the form of the novel or the deep structures of poetic language. What makes language poetic, which a lot of them ended up like, I've already taken a long time, but a lot of what they ended up on kind of presaged what Brecht would do in the theater with like alienating devices. They thought what made something poetic or artistic as opposed to like normal language is making it strange, quote unquote, you know, drawing attention to its own construction basically.
Sure, which is very foundational in the postmodernist movement that would come along in that time. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
They were brutally suppressed in the Soviet Union, though, at the time. So.
Well, wanting to break free...
No, it wasn't the Soviet Union, just Russia at that time. That would have been the turn of the century.
It actually, right around that time is when French literature starts to introduce the Oulipo writers and everything, and they're going through their own governmental repression. So there may be something to that.
Maybe.
Because we are also seeing that in recent strains of American fiction in what we can now call the Trump era of America.
Yeah.
Lots of structural, semiotic, sort of... Bowdlerism is maybe the wrong word I'm looking for, but just sort of playing around with those ideas again, being more less formulaic, or if you are formulaic, drawing attention to the formula, that kind of thing. Speaking of formulas and structures and things, someone who had a very complicated thought on that, Aaron, was who?
Toni Morrison.
Yeah!
Do you know what we're talking about today, everyone? Toni Morrison. Toni, this is your favorite author, right?
Absolutely, without question.
Why?
Because she's the only person writing in the English language who is better than Shakespeare.
Why?
Unequivocally.
Why?
Her language is more powerful, easily, and Shakespeare is no slouch, let's be clear about that. I love Shakespeare. Everything that he does is unbelievably brilliant. But Toni edges him out because she... And, okay, so this is a very complicated question to answer, even though it's a one-word question. I think, just in my reading of her, and there's still more I have to do because I've not read all of her novels. I've read, I think, half. And I'm, reading her nonfiction. I'm just sort of constantly always reading her and rereading her and rethinking and reapproaching the work. What she did, I think the greatest triumph that she brought to English language fiction is the ability, not just once, but from Paradise all the way to her final novel. So that's Paradise, Love, A Mercy, Home, and God Help the Child. So that's the last 5 novels that she did. In Paradise, she eliminates race after the first line. Do you know the first sentence of that novel? They shot the white girl first. That's the first sentence, and you never see any appearance of any racial terms ever again throughout the rest of the book. Which, by the way, sounds like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, some experimental thing that someone tried one time and that was fun. No. She did it, and then she does it again and again and again for the rest of her novels, to the point where, with the exception, I would say, of God Help the Child, because God Help the Child is like The Bluest Eye in the sense that it's about race. So sometimes, looking at it, you're like, she didn't know she was dying yet, right? Because, God Help the Child, I think, was published in 2015. She died in 2019, and you're just like, was death just kind of knocking on the door, and she just had to have this sort of last word? Like a closing out almost, because it feels that way, even though that's not really how human beings work, even artists with a sort of a clear image of what they're attempting to do over a career. But I think that range within 11 novels and, 4 decades? From 1970 to 2019? Mm-hmm. How many decades? Or 2015, I guess. How many decades is that?
70 to 80.
Yeah.
80 to 90.
Yep.
90 to 2000. Mm-hmm. 2000 to 2010.
Mm-hmm. So that's 45 years.
Wow.
Because 2015 was the final novel, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's 45 years. That's extraordinary. And within that, there's this whole, there's the confrontation with race, which The Bluest Eye and Sula and some of the others sort of, I think the pinnacle of that is obviously Beloved, right? It's the singularly most celebrated novel of slavery in the United States of America, written by anybody, because it turned a corner for the slave narrative that had never been turned before, and it did it so succinctly and brilliantly and passionately and knowledgeably,
What was that corner?
Introducing, which is strange to say, but it's true, introducing women as being as much at the core of slavery as anyone else, because the female is the main character. If you can say main character, there are many main characters in that, but woman and womanhood is not just the main character, but it is also the main subject of Beloved, because the whole point of the novel is, or the whole subject of the novel is, this woman commits infanticide against her child to protect her child from slavery, fails to kill the others, and then the ghost of that dead child, murdered child, comes back to haunt her years later after the threat has somewhat been diminished, and haunts her throughout the rest of the book, to sort of, in a way, sort of instruct her upon, or get at the root of the question, the heart of the matter, which is was it the right thing to do to kill my child to save her from slavery, or should I have kept her alive and had her go back to something that I I, as a runaway slave, know is a horrible thing, right? You know, so there's all of that. That's what that novel is, and it turns a corner because it says so much that had not been said about slavery, particularly in fiction, ever before. It just sort of turned the classic slave narrative on its head, and provided something new, in an undeniable way. And it also lit her career up in the United States in a way that had never been before. The Brits have loved Toni Morrison from the beginning. They have been obsessed with her from the beginning. And I didn't realize this how much until recently when I started, because I frequently will do this, because you all know me, I'm an obsessive, so I will frequently go back and watch a series of interviews from as early as I can find one all the way through to the latest one that I can find, and I suddenly realized, I'm like, wait a minute, the first American program to interview her, like television program, was Bill Moyers. After Beloved had been published and won the Pulitzer Prize. Suddenly America was like, wait a minute, who is she? If you read the reviews beforehand, there's like one New York Times review for Beloved,
right,
where the critic is seriously, I mean, it's not a lot, but he says in like a handful of paragraphs, this is a serious work by a serious new writer, we need to be paying attention to her. It had two benefits. One, it got her published at Random House because Bob Gottlieb, who was her editor for most of her work, who also, by the way, edited Roald Dahl and had to tell Roald Dahl that if he was going to be anti-Semitic, don't do it to his editors or he would be fired. They would cancel his contracts and suffer the consequences, which is fascinating. Anyway, but Bob Gottlieb and Toni worked at Random at the same time, but she worked downstairs. He worked upstairs, two different departments, but, you know, it's nice to kind of know the geography of the building. And when I'm assuming he read the review first and then went and bought the book and read it. And he was like, wait a minute, she works here. We should be employing her? And he went to I think it was either his boss came to him or he went to his boss and was like, hello, there's a writer who works here who's really good and who fits in my department. Like, we should hire her. So he called her upstairs and said, we're having a lunch. What are you working on? And that's how Sula gets published. And so, you know, so even as she's like building up her early books, which were not well reviewed, with the exception of the first one, you get to Song of Solomon, which becomes a national bestseller. So that's good. You know, she's turning a bit of a corner. People are starting to recognize her, but she's not a big name until Beloved comes out and she wins the Pulitzer Prize. And even then, that was contentious because people were like, no, someone else deserved that Pulitzer Prize. And then, you know, Black America was like, but she's brilliant. What's wrong with you people? You're racist. I mean, it was insane. But the Brits all along were like, Toni Morrison. Like, they loved her. There's a wonderful interview with Salman Rushdie where he's such a geek, that whole interview. Like, he's just like, but Toni, you do this thing. And as a writer myself, I couldn't tell if you were cheating or if you were like, how did you do that? And it was just, it's great. It's, you know, they're talking shop. This was after Beloved. This was when Jazz was published. But still, you can tell that, you know, someone has been reading. And he even said that Song of Solomon made Midnight's Children possible. Mm-hmm. So, you know, someone as powerful and mighty and luminary as Salman Rushdie to say that about someone else, you know, anyone else is a big deal. But anyway, so yes, in a nutshell, that's why she's my favorite, because she's capable of doing something that no other writer has ever done, which is make my actual breath leave my body in the first chapter of a book of hers that I read, which was Beloved, by the way.
So it's like me wanting to throw books out of the window. It
was unbelievable. I've never had that happen since. And it certainly had never happened before. I heard a voice in my brain said, take a breath. And only once I took the breath did I realize that for the last page of that chapter, I had not been breathing. And it's a 27-page chapter. So I'm only assuming it was the last page because I didn't pass out or asphyxiate or anything. But that's a pretty significant reaction to have, I think, to any piece of art. Mm-hmm. So, there's my really long answer to question number one.
I mean, listen, you started talking all about that, and I don't have any more questions because my brain went, okay, there's a lot of words. Grant has a question.
Yes. Do you see in like our current batch of writers, or even in the few generations that came like immediately after her, do you see any like stylistic innovations or even just like trademarks of hers that have been picked up by others or kind of had an impact?
I think no. With the exception, and I think this is something that even she remarked upon throughout her career, especially after the Nobel Prize, because it was very clear what was happening after the Nobel Prize, in a sort of aesthetic sense. Black women's writing, which is something she herself as an editor shepherded, so I think she even had a clearer vision than most people, because she literally would go to people like Toni Cade Bambara and Gail Jones, who nobody knew was writing because they were published. Nobody knew who they were. And she knew who they were because they were friends or colleagues. And she would say, oh, all right, Gail, you got 50 pages. And these 50 pages are brilliant. But you do realize there's more in here. And Gail Jones going, what are you talking about? And she's like, okay, come here. And then teaching her how to grow a scene, how to build a scene, how to make it fuller, richer, and then Gail Jones goes away and comes back with this novel that Tony's like, it's brilliant. I told you it was brilliant. And then publishing it, and now it's a staple in American literature. I mean, they teach Gail Jones's early books all over the place. Mm-hmm. It may not be, the bestseller kind of thing or whatever, but when her most recent novel came out, which I think there'd been like a 10 to 15 year gap between her last novel and this most recent one a couple of years ago, there were literal, like, all of the academic world was like, Gail Jones is back. Like, it was interesting to sort of see that reaction. She also did things like, Angela Davis would not have published a memoir of Toni Morrison after Angela Davis gets out of jail day one, does an interview. Day two, Tony's on the phone like, all right, where's the autobiography? And she's like, I'm 27. Who writes an autobiography at 27? She's like, girl, do you know who you are?
You know what you just did?
Yeah, right. And so they sit down and same thing. She would mark up the paper and go, okay, but describe the room. You're in a room. What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it sound like?
How did you feel in the room?
How did you feel in the room, right? And so I think that has been something that's enriched Black writing overall. And you always see callbacks, particularly post-2000. Every writer who is Black, from Zadie Smith to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who are both, by the way, not African Americans. One is Nigerian, one is British. But all the writers who are
My Bay and N.K. Jemisin.
Yes, all of
I love them.
All of the writers of the African diaspora who have come to publishing post-2000, almost all of them are like, yeah, but Toni, though. Even though they may write just completely differently, I think the influence that I wish we saw more of that is hard to... It's difficult because the times in which we live almost make it impossible for us to be able to do that. And we also have kind of gone in a recursive direction in fiction, which is that, and I was complaining to Erin about this recently, about how the word Black is capitalized now as a rule in publishing. And I am like, oh.
Toni went on a rant about this. What was it?
I did, yes.
Friday?
Yes, and I have the distinct feeling, I could be wrong, because Toni Morrison was a complicated human being, and we can't exhume her bones and ask her, but...
Sure you can.
I do, right? But
I can go get the Ouija board.
She was rather spiritualist, so maybe we could. But I genuinely believe that it would have been one of those things where it's like, are you kidding me? Why? Because it is an affront to a kind of... being rid of race, that in a way that she really wanted fiction to do. I'll give a perfect example, actually. So in her novel Home, what you were saying, Grant, about that film kind of reminded me of it, so I wanted to bring that full circle.
Yeah.
She wrote her penultimate novel, Home, is set in the 50s, and it's about a Black soldier who comes back from Korea and has to make his way from one side of the country to the other because of his sister is unwell. It's a very short novel, but never once throughout the entire novel does she ever identify him as a Black man. As a matter of fact, she doesn't even use color until the very last chapter where he's approaching home. And suddenly, the leaves are green, the cherries are red. There's suddenly
Also, there's no descriptions of color in the entire
no descriptions of color in the entire book until the end. Because he's arriving home, and she said, I wanted the reader to feel the way it feels when you go home and you know that's where you're supposed to
and
be.
all of the colors kind of like explode in your brain because you're home and you're comfortable.
Yeah, and I was like, that's one of those hair-raising kinds of things where you're like, yeah, no wonder nobody else is doing that. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's why you win Nobel Prizes. So I do think that, in a way, the power and the force of such a writer, being a black woman born in the Midwest in the United States to a working class family, the granddaughter of slaves, or former slaves, ex-slaves, whatever, that legacy has had more of an impact than the actual structure of her writing.
Okay.
And really that's only because I'm not published yet, because she's my model. I have to, in a way, I feel like one of my duties is to eliminate as much as I can, the necessity to racialize one's characters for the audience as if that matters in any way. Because that is an affront to American sensibilities. We racialize everything. Do you guys realize this? This is part of a tangent. This is a tangent. Do you realize that anytime you apply for anything at all, anything, there's a checkbox that you have to check, every single American? Guess what it's trying to identify?
I don't know, Tony. What does it try to identify?
Your race.
Tony went on this rant earlier to me during
Oh, yeah, I did.
Friday,
I forgot. Yeah.
You have 10 minutes for your rant, by the way.
Isn't that annoying?
Yes.
It's annoying. It's really annoying. I'm actually kind of surprised that that in order to buy a movie ticket, one can't, one has to. But it's that serious. It's that pervasive, right? It doesn't matter how simple of a thing that you're applying for that has no weight, no anything. Race is a thing they have to know.
When you apply for a job, when you apply to college, when you when you apply for a house.
Yep. Because
when you apply for a loan.
And you know why, right? It's on your taxes. Mm-hmm. It's a tax code. Mm-hmm. So right there, therein lies sort of a fundamental core problem. And I think when you have a writer who is super intelligent and forthright and decides to do something as bold as remove something that is so core to to identifying oneself as an American, that you either live that way or you deny living that way. To do that in fiction is really powerful. I would say maybe someone who has done that as much in his career, but hasn't been as recognized for it until recently when he wrote James, which is, by the way, a novel about a slave that Mark Twain kind of ignored, is Percival Everett. I mean, he did write Erasure, which is what the movie American Fiction, if anyone's seen that, is based off of, which was a straightforward attempt to him being like, all right, look, you want a black book, I'll give you a black book here. And so it's funny that both times when writing Erasure and James, he gets signaled as oh my goodness, a brilliant black voice. And it's that was the whole point of Erasure, was to say, hey, guess what? I don't want to have to write a black book to be a published black author in this country. And
then it's just reinforced every time. I feel so bad for him.
I know, right? But at the same time, he still just does what he wants, and that's nice. It's kind of nice that you have anyone who can just is whatever. I'll just go retreat and do whatever I want anyway, because he's Percival Everett. He can.
Mood. Can I be Percival? But can I be him?
I love how awkward he is. He's wonderfully awkward in his acceptance speech for the National Book Award.
He just seems like he wants to go back to his rant.
He really does. He just wants to run away.
He's I just want to go drink a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And sit on my porch.
Mm-hmm. So does George Saunders, by the way, who pays wonderful tribute to winning an award. But he's oh, and by the way, I do kind of just want to vanish. Goodbye. And you're oh, George.
Lincoln and the Bardo was one of my all-time favorite books.
Yes. I know you're going to read the new one, right?
He has a new one coming out?
Oh, I love that you didn't know that. All right, well.
I'm not in the loop.
Well, just be quiet. Next week is coming.
All right. Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so we love Toni Morrison. I love Toni Morrison.
What book is this? Did I buy it?
Yes, you did. It's in the back. Yeah. I highly recommend reading her for yourself. And you can start anywhere. I mean, there's a great body of work.
Is Jazz the book where it's being told from the book's perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
See, who thinks like that?
I think it's either I'm either going to start with that or Beloved, probably.
Yeah, I read like the first. Jazz is one of those. Jazz and Tar Baby. I need to go back and read, like actually read them, because I bounced off of both of them at different points because I was just like, what are you doing right now? But they both have that sort of brilliant approach to them. Song of Solomon actually is the one I'm currently reading, and it's the most straightforward because she does this thing in all of her books where she tells them out of sequence. So that's something that is happening to a character in one chapter. The next chapter is from the perspective of their parent when their parent was like 14. And, just things like that. She doesn't tell the story in order. The only one she does that with is Song of Solomon, because she was like, well, I am telling the story of a man who has to learn how to be a man. And that story is usually told, A to Z. Fine. Don't know why that was the reason she did it, but I do think that it paid its dividends, It was a national bestseller, so.
It's national bestseller.
Sometimes you do need to do things. Mm-hmm. Can I tell one final funny anecdote that I just love telling people?
You have 6 minutes, yes.
Okay, so when when Toni got the call for the Nobel Prize, after sort of not believing it and being like, wait, because people were calling her and like, you won the Nobel Prize, and she's like, you must be drunk. Absolutely not. And then they called, the Swedish Academy called, I think at like noon, because she's at work, and she said, can you fax that over to me? So they faxed the information to let her know, like, yeah, you really won. And as she's beginning to accept this, someone told her that Oprah had selected Song of Solomon as the second Oprah Book Club pick. She, Toni Morrison, did not have a television and did not watch TV. So she was like, I know who Oprah is, but she didn't understand how big Oprah was. And so she's like, she told her friend, she's like, who is going to buy a book just because Oprah told them to buy a book? What's the big deal? Who cares? And then the next royalty check came in, and she was like, oh, apparently this is a big deal. Okay, I guess I'm going on Oprah's show. And it's really just, I love how fascinatingly oblivious one can be when one has no television set. You're just completely closed off. Not completely, but, closed off enough from the world to realize, like, it's not that big of a deal that some, talk show host wants to read my book. Who cares? Let them read the book. And then suddenly the money shows up and you're like, oh, that many people want to... Okay, I guess this is kind of a big deal and really fun. She also said that her mom, when she called her mom, who died a few months, I think 6 months after she won the award... but she called her mom to let her know. And her mother, I love this, by the way. Her mom said to her, of all my children who were going to achieve something like this, I knew it would be you.
No.
And I'm like, who thinks like that? What kind of... I mean, a woman who lived in Lorain, Ohio her whole life, which if you've ever seen Lorain, Ohio on a map, it's like teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Who thinks like that about their child?
It's like getting a miss it place.
Right.
Where is it in Ohio? Do you know? Is it like closer to Kentucky or?
No, it's sort of.
Sorry to derail.
If you know where Oberlin College is, it's not far from Oberlin College.
Okay.
It's between Sandusky.
Yeah.
And Cleveland.
Yes,
oh, okay.
it's steel town.
So if you really look at like how
town.
Cleveland is like a map like this, so here's Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
It's like on the very, very edge of the outskirts of Cleveland as a small like town.
I want to go and sit on the Toni Morrison bench, which, by the way, everyone who is listening to this who lives in Adrian, we have one right outside of the Lenawee County Museum. So visit the Lenawee County Museum.
You mean the Historical Society?
Yes, the Historical Society. Sit on the bench by the road. I sit there frequently to write when it's warm, not when it's snowy and rainy.
Not when it's 29 degrees and cloudy outside.
So that's what I mean when I say I channel her. I channel her. I sit in that space. I write in my notebook and I talk to her because, she's my teacher.
Good.
Honestly.
Love that for you.